Once you've gotten yourself to a point where maybe you've been working on the supine hip adduction paired with breathing in order to retrain the abdominal muscles to work together, and you feel like those muscles are coordinating really nicely, and your back is hurting a little bit less, and you're ready to move on to a harder exercise for the core. This is a nice series to work through for developing a little bit more core strength, and you'll feel the difference once you move forward from the hip adduction with the breathing to this. You'll notice a big difference in how difficult it is. So let's get into a little bit more core strengthening and give you some ideas for some good exercises there. So lying on your back, I like to start by snuggling my shoulder blades underneath my body a little bit and towards my hips in order to lengthen my neck and give my spine a nice good alignment. And then engage the abdominal muscles as you posterior pelvic tuck. You can think about peeling that tailbone off the ground and then reversing that into an anterior pelvic tilt. And this is a nice way to just get some pain-free movement and learn to move your low back. That's a really important part when it comes to getting rid of back pain, is learning to introduce pain-free movement of the spine. So when you're ready to move on from the pelvic tilts, a nice progression is to do some small marching. I like to put my hands on the pelvis, on this bony prominence called the ASIS, the anterior superior iliac spine. So once you find that bony prominence there, put your hands there, and that's just to give you some biofeedback. It's just to give you some feedback on whether or not you're doing this with the proper muscles engaged and supporting you or not. So if you start with a nice relaxed, just marching, you'll feel the pelvis kind of moves a little bit, and I'll exaggerate that with my hands. If I were to kind of follow that movement, this is what my hands would be doing. So now if I engage my abdominal muscles, engage my pelvic floor, and keep those muscles active while I do this marching, my pelvis doesn't move nearly as much, and hopefully hardly moves at all if I can learn to coordinate those muscles well. So this is a nice exercise, again, bringing the mind into the body to retrain those core muscles to do what we want them to do, which is support the pelvis and coordinate and learn to isolate hip movement and reciprocal motion of the legs without having so much motion happening at the pelvis, and as a result, the low back. So a progression from here would be to bring the legs up into a 90-90 position, meaning a 90-degree bend at the hips and a 90-degree bend at the knees. And from here, there's a couple things that you can do. First, just pushing the low back down, as if peeling the tailbone off of the ground. You'll notice maybe your abdominal muscles start to shake a little bit here, as this is a little bit more challenging. And you can just breathe here, focusing on using these muscles to push the low back down as well as peel that tailbone off the ground. And you'll feel even just breathing here, doing that is a workout. And then from here, you can add tapping one foot at a time. Again, trying to maintain that low back pushing down, the abdominals holding and supporting the low back and the pelvis as you do that reciprocal movement with the legs. From here, you can go into a dead bug movement where one arm and one leg, the opposite arm and leg, move away from one another and then back and then switch sides. Again, using those abdominal muscles. You might even see mine are a little shaky when I get out to the end of that movement. And that's really making those abdominal muscles work. And then rest. And I like to do some windshield wipers with my knees in between rounds of doing that because it is pretty strenuous on the abdominal muscles. And if that makes your back feel a little achy, sometimes doing these windshield wipers can clear out that achy feeling from the low back in between rounds of working the abdominals.